Welcome to this episode of Flies on the Ball. This episode we talk about the latest round of Premier League results, our fantasy football woes, and the controversy surrounding recent postponements of Premier League games. Enjoy. So, we all captained Emmanuel Dennis for this game week, and he has proceeded to do very little for us. Would anyone like to share their grief with the group?
4 points as a captain. That's 2 points. He got 2 points.
I'm not ready to talk about it. I'm still raw.
When you have Joao Cancelo with 11 points on your bench, seeing your captain with 2 bloody points, or, 4 points, because double, it's infuriating.
It's okay, because he's got that double game week. He plays again, right?
Oh, yeah!
Right?
This is the stress of the FPL football manager.
But there were some interesting results this week.
Oh, definitely. I think we could also even talk about Game of the Week. Not just Game of the Week, but Goal of the Week. I don't know if you saw Ward-Prowse's free kick, but it was an absolute banger.
Well, I saw the other free kick against Crystal Palace, but was it similar to that one?
It was further out.
Okay.
It was just an absolute. It was further out, and it was similar to a Ronaldo kind of free kick. It was just straight knuckleball, far corner. Sarr had no chance really of getting it.
Very nice.
Unfortunately, it did not save Southampton though.
No, it did not.
Still lost 3-1.
Wolves are really impressive. I'm glad I brought Sarr in, even though he did concede that belter a free kick. But the thing is, I already made a transfer, so when I brought him in for Ramsdale, he wasn't going to play because the North London derby was off. I was losing 4 points, but then Sarr has got, off the top of my head, a few
7,
points.
I think.
7.
Not even for that was just for saves and bonus. Because they conceded, he didn't even get the clean sheet. But
7, so minimise my damage. But Wolves are doing well.
Connor Cody got a goal in that game, which was really unexpected. I brought him in because I figured that he would get a clean sheet against Southampton, because Wolves did come off a string of 3 straight clean sheets, doing pretty well defensively. Not so good offensively, but pretty well defensively. And then, he gets a goal, which is a nice surprise, especially considering how Southampton then went and scored, losing the clean sheet.
that was his second goal this season, and his 3rd overall. You can see the previous season's history, and he had 1 goal last season, and then nothing else.
You see, I brought him in for the goals.
Wolves have been tight throughout the season, so it's an understandable choice.
I had Cody. I used a free hit, and I did not have Cody.
That's a Sam masterclass.
It was something.
Did you bring any Everton players in, though? Because they lost to Norwich, which turned out to be Benitez's last game.
They did. I almost brought in an Everton player, and then last minute I swapped them out for Sissoko from Watford, who got 1 point. So,
Why'd you bring in Sissoko? He barely gets any points.
Why? Because I need another midfielder. What's really sad is I have Ward-Prowse on the bench.
That's what the free hit does to you. The free hit makes you do things that nobody in their right mind.
That's why I got rid of my 2 quite early on.
Wait, Jack, did you say Benitez was sacked? I did not know that. But no, in that game, I did have Damari Gray, because I've sort of made it a thing of mine now. I'm really sorry, Norwich, but I have made it a thing of mine now to just look at whoever's playing Norwich and perhaps transfer in a player for specifically the purpose of maybe getting points against Norwich. I kept Damari Gray for that reason, because I figured he might get a goal and or an assist against Norwich. Instead, no, they lose. Norwich actually scored twice.
Is it worth touching upon the fact that, you could probably argue convincingly that Benitez was doomed from the start, given his association with Liverpool, his comments on Everton being a small club made while he was, I believe, manager of Liverpool. Yeah, the Everton fans were never going to warm to him.
It was like the first in 100 years, right?
Yes, it is the first manager to manage both clubs, and it did not last very long. And he's managed to create, because Liverpool fans joke that he was Agent Rafa, and when you look at his time at Everton, you could argue that he's done a lot more damage than a normal manager would, because he came in, he signed a few okay players, he got rid of head of performance and stuff like that, had a few members of the Everton's backroom staff, got rid of all that just so he could have more power, and the club backed him on this. And then he gets rid of Luca Dean to Aston Villa earlier this month. They're one of their best players. And then so the club back him over Luca Dean, and then they sack him a few days later. So I think it's fair to say Everton are a mess at the moment. They are poorly run. The fact that they got Benitez in the first place, you could argue, demonstrated that they are a bit out of touch with what their fans like.
I mean, what must that mean for Everton, though? Because they've now had Carlo Ancelotti and Rafa Benitez, 2 Champions League winning managers in the past couple of years, and both of those haven't worked out. So you kind of wonder who they'll go for next, really.
Well, Ancelotti was a bit of a surprise departure, wasn't it? As far as I remember, he kind of left them a bit.
Yeah, he was basically just offered the Real job?
The Real Madrid job, yeah. To be fair, you don't turn that
so
down.
he just upped and left.
Yeah, and he wasn't bad at Everton. He was doing okay, nothing special, but I think it just put Everton in their place, which is understandable, really. If you get offered a job as big as the Real Madrid job, then you're going to consider it, especially if, like Ancelotti, you've got a good history of that club. So I don't blame him for leaving.
I don't either, no.
But yes, in terms of potential successors, there are rumours that Martinez has been contacted, Lampard has been contacted, they're considering Wayne Rooney as well, who's currently with Derby.
Derby, who are in trouble at the moment.
Trouble, but to be fair to Rooney, he's doing a decent job.
I don't mean points deduction wise. I mean, as in, there's talk about them being booted out of the league, essentially.
Really?
I thought there was also talk of them being bought by Mike Ashley as well. That's even worse.
Well, there is, but the thing is, no one's willing to buy them while they've got these lawsuits from Middlesbrough and Wickham. And obviously, if you're in administration so long without finding a buyer, the EFL rules are to,
I think it was 18 months. You can't be
18 months, yeah.
Imagine if Derby County went.
It'd be atrocious, and it's testament to how
massive,
badly the EFL have handled this. And the EFL actually had to make a statement saying they weren't actively trying to destroy Derby, because people think that they're actively trying to destroy Derby because they're not. Basically, these lawsuits like against from Middlesbrough and Wickham, they've just allowed to go on, and it's blocking any potential buyers, which is blocking Derby from leaving administration, which is therefore ultimately could lead to them.
This is the most high-profile case of a massive club potentially just disappearing. We've had Macclesfield and Bury, in the past going. Macclesfield has been reinvented slightly under a different guise. Hopefully it comes back. But imagine if Derby County went. I mean,
a team that, like back in the 70s, won the league. I think twice.
A good history, a nice rich history, a big club. A club.
It'd be a travesty. I mean, it's a travesty to lose any team to financial troubles, especially considering we're just coming out of a pandemic. But it's not good for sure. And
if a club like Derby disappeared, rival fans wouldn't get anything out of that really, because well, if you did, then you're a bit too caught up in tribalism. The football's fun because there's a rivalry, because there's a club you can essentially fight against. But if that disappeared, if
you wouldn't have the Brian Clough Trophy anymore, which is what they use in games between Derby County and Nottingham Forest.
It'd be a real shame to lose him. Sorry, I just touched on that because of the Wayne Rooney situation. Possibly he'd be getting a call from Everton, but I don't know. Is that a mistake for him? He's still relatively new. He's only really managed Derby, right?
A mistake for Everton. Well, both of them probably. You'd expect them to have. Well, they're not going to be able to pick anyone worse than Benitez in terms for the fans, probably. But they could at least aim, maybe not for Ancelotti level, but they did get him. Like they do have history and a pull.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think they should go for Jurgen Klopp.
I was about to ask, what's the worst possible choice? Like, what's the worst possible choice Everton could go for? That might be it.
Well, I just think because they need to. I wouldn't be surprised if they just back Duncan, Big Dunk, for the rest of the season, and then find someone in the summer, because they can't do too much fan service because that won't necessarily work.
Well, I mean, the rate they're going, they might want to call Big Sam.
True.
Yeah, true. Bring Roy Hodgson in.
They could quite easily get sucked down into that relegation fight if they're not careful. And they play us soon, which will be an interesting game.
Leeds are on the up, so I think Leeds have a good chance there.
Well, we did beat West Ham 3-2.
So let's talk about that game. Yeah. Do you enjoy that game, Sam?
It was very good. It was a very good game. So we went ahead initially with a Harrison goal, and we defended after that quite well. But the problem was we had so we barely have any players as it is, facing a huge injury crisis. And we finally get Rodrigo and Struijk back. Now, Rodrigo's on the bench. He's not ready to play a full 90 minutes. Struijk comes straight back in at centre-back because Llorente's suspended. And we do quite well. We've got 2 players back. The rest of the bench, so there's 1 senior player on the bench. The rest of them are all in the 23s, including Archie Gray, who's 15. 22 minutes in, Forshaw and Firpo go down at the same time. So Forshaw gets subbed off for I think it was Hjeld, who got brought on for Forshaw, and then Koch moved up into midfield. So Hjeld came on then, and then Firpo tried to continue, but within 60 seconds he was off as well for Lewis Bate. Both of those making their debut, taking us up to 8 teenagers this season, which is, mad. And, after that, bit shaky, we ended up conceding not long after, and then immediately got another goal back. So it was very... lots of ups and downs. Defensively, a little bit shaky, especially from set pieces. Every time they had a set piece, heart in mouth moment. But other than that, offensively, looked a heck of a lot better. And there's still Bamford to come back, Rodrigo to come back fully. So we've got players on the way back, hopefully.
Has Harrison always been such a goal threat? Because he looked very accomplished in most of his finishes.
He scored lots of goals,
especially his third goal.
Yeah, his third goal was really good. That was his first hat trick, but he scored last season quite a lot. I think probably 6 or 7 last season. I don't remember exactly. This season, not so many. I think this was his 4th league goal.
Yeah,
and 3 of them came this game.
I know that all too well, as I actually started this FPL season with I started out with Harrison in the team, and I did stick with him for a couple of game weeks, but then promptly removed him when I saw that there wasn't much going on there.
Yeah, he was suffering from a lack of form early in the season, but I think this will have really boosted his confidence. I mean, he comes on last week and scores, and then this week he's just come out swinging. But it's completely changed. So beating West Ham 3-2, because West Ham are a brilliant team, and still in 4th place, I think. But doing that has lifted Leeds to 9 points clear of the relegation zone. But looking up the table, I think they're only 3 points from
Leicester in 10th. Yeah.
So it's 3 points from the top half of the table, 9 points from the relegation zone. It's looking up.
And also, in spite of the loss, West Ham was still a very, very good option. So Bowen still got a goal, Antonio still got an assist. Still good options there.
Fornals.
Yeah, Fornals as well.
The other game down at the bottom of the table, so Leeds West Ham, Leeds took 3 points, Norwich took 3 points from Everton, and then the other game from below there, since I think both of Burnley's this week have been postponed.
So then there was Newcastle against Watford, which ended in a 1-1 draw. Not the best of results for either parties.
Newcastle was so close to winning, yeah. And then
yeah. You say so close. I mean, Watford, it was pretty even, right? Or it looked it. So I don't know. I think 1-1's probably fair.
But of course, we're all angry at the fact that Emmanuel Dennis didn't score in that game either.
Yes.
I'm also angry that San Maximan chose now to score and not the 2 months that I had him. Why is he doing this?
It's why has he done this specifically to us? Why did Dennis not score? And Dennis didn't even play the full game, I don't think.
Do you think you'll keep him? Do you think you'll keep Dennis?
He's got He's got Norwich. They're at home to Norwich after this, so I'm gonna say 1 more week at least.
Yeah,
because he's really been more good than he's been bad.
Oh yeah, because then afterwards he'll have like Man City and then Wolves or something.
And he scores 6 goals in each game.
West Ham away.
West Ham away. Yeah.
Brighton at home. We've got a couple of. Well, I don't know. You'd call them. What's the fixture rating? There might be a few 3s coming up. Not very many greens. No, that wasn't good for audio either.
Some good chances, I suppose. Some good chances for him to score the next few games. Speaking of I suppose that kind of. I don't know if because we haven't really talked about a particular fixture. We kind of blended the fixtures with FPL. So on that note, the Aston Villa game was very good, very good for the neutral at least. And that catalyst for that was Coutinho. So are any of you tempted to bring Coutinho in? I know it's one game, and United aren't very good at the back, to put it mildly, although they are slightly better without Maguire at the moment. But would you be tempted to bring Coutinho in if he's accommodated properly into the Villa system?
How much is Coutinho at the minute in fantasy football?
7 million.
That's not
for
bad.
FPL.
That's not bad, honestly, because he must still be a good player, surely. Must still be a pretty all right player. Can't be that bad.
Yeah, I think he's still good. He's just his time at Barcelona. He was lukewarm most of it. At Bayern, he did well, but then again, he was part of a Bayern team that was scoring goals for fun back in 2019-20 when they won, was it 6 trophies in the end? So he's still decent. He's not a leader. He has to be, if he's surrounded by players who are dynamic and have a commanding presence, then he's going to flourish. But he won't take the game by the scruff of the neck. He's not that kind of player. He doesn't have the authority or the presence.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a home debut in front of a lot of very excited Villa fans against Man United, who are really surviving on individual quality, not on any sort of team cohesion or actual. So,
because the first goal, actually, Man United's first goal, it was a Fernandes goal. It was credited to Fernandes, but it was more a blunder by Emiliano Martinez.
Yeah, I mean, he's usually reliable, and I heard this on Talk Sport, I think, the other day, and they mentioned how prudently that Martinez has a lot of credit in the bank with Villa fans because he's done so well for them. So one mistake won't change a thing.
Not just that, I think he really takes everything, really owns everything, all his mistakes. I'm not basing this just on the fact that he posted on Instagram with a still of him clawing the ball from the inside of the goal right after his mistake, but that is partially what I'm basing it on. But no, it just doesn't seem to shy away. He's got that kind of he's got the crazy streak, but it's combined with he's just a good personality, and I say that as an Arsenal fan. I do miss him a little bit, and I kind of wish we had him back, maybe. But,
we all make mistakes. He's okay, Martinez. And to be fair, he did still make 4 saves in the game, at least in FPL terms.
Yeah, he's a good choice to have in your team, although Sarr at Wolves has just been a revelation.
He was gutted that he let that free kick in.
Oh, yeah, if you look at the Ward Prowse footage again and again, even though it was almost unstoppable, Sarr is really disappointed in himself, which is a good attitude to have as a keeper, as any player really. If something goes wrong, even if it's mild, even if you could argue persuasively that you had no chance in preventing it, being disappointed in failure is good because it means it'll drive him forward. So I'll probably keep him in my team for now, even though Ramsdale will be back soon.
Yeah, I've got Sarr coming back next week after the free hit's gone, along with Son.
Who do Wolves have in their next few fixtures?
Wolves' next game is against Brentford.
Speaking of which, oh dear.
Oh yeah, oh dear.
I know. Yeah.
Brentford are not falling by the wayside. They haven't run out of steam. They just don't have steam, I think.
Just
basically.
Quite a poor run.
Well,
of
they've
form.
won one in the last 5, and the other 4 have all been losses.
Do you think they are outside chance to be the 3rd team down?
I don't think they'll be relegated. I mean, they've got 23 points. They've got a lot of points in the bank already. And we're talking about teams that are... Norwich, 13 points from 21 games.
I think Norwich are done.
There are worse teams than Brentford, put it that way.
Yeah.
As long as they pick up points now and then, because they need to stop this form as soon as they can.
Yeah, they do. But I think 23, they've got enough of a cushion that they can be afforded a little bit of time. I think they'll probably finish lower than they currently are, mainly because I expect Leeds to pick up more points.
Let's see, Brentford are on 23, but they've played more games than 5 of the teams below them.
Yes, they have. But only... So they played 21. I think the team that's played the least is obviously Burnley, who've only played 17. They're going to have hell when it comes to playing all those fixtures at once. So I don't think Burnley are going to get maximum points from that. I don't think Burnley will get maximum points from them.
That would be hilarious for my spreadsheet. Just 1 week they shoot from 20th up to top half, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a sight to see, but I don't see them win. I don't see them winning all those games without the fixture congestion, let alone with it. So I think they're safe from Burnley. Newcastle, it's such a tricky one because they have the ability to buy so many players. Like they just bid over 40 million for Hazard. So and it was accepted, but he doesn't want to come play for Newcastle. That's what the BBC thing says. So I'm glad he's not coming over for them.
I guess with Brentford, but I guess it was ultimately a bit of a tall order for them to get points against Liverpool, even if they're without Salah and Mane. It was maybe a bit of a tall order for them to get points at Anfield.
They were in the game for quite a while.
It was the last
first
goal.
half was difficult for Liverpool.
Brentford
were nice and dogmatic. But as Ben said, the 3rd goal was due to a goalkeeper mistake. Brentford, you could argue, missed their main keeper But they were in the game for most of the first half, partly down to Liverpool not having ideas of how to break Brentford down. As Klopp said after the game, Brentford have a unique way of making it hard for Liverpool to get through them, although you could point this to a wider case in general, and there's a good Athletic article on this about how many teams don't press Liverpool because that's what Liverpool want. Liverpool want you to go toe-to-toe with them because they will outfight you and beat you. But if you sit back, as we saw with Arsenal in the League Cup, if you sit back and form a compact defence, compact unit, then you're asking the kind of questions Liverpool don't want to answer, because Liverpool don't have the kind of creative nous midfield that a Manchester City have, for example, whereby they can break a team down through various clever moves. Liverpool outwork you and like to just smash against that wall, as it were. But if it's a strong, solid, compact wall, then it's harder. But Liverpool like to exploit space more pertinently in behind. So if you play an open game of football, there'll be gaps in and around your back four in your midfield, and Liverpool like to exploit that, especially with their fullbacks bombing on. But if you're in a low block, giving Liverpool no space to use, then it's harder, which is why Arsenal did so well. Then again, that's simplifying Arsenal.
Forced into that
simplifying.
scenario.
True, yeah. Although, yeah, Arsenal were forced into that, and credit to Arsenal, they worked hard, because you can't just form a... Well, I think Arsenal had a 5-3-1 or something like that, off the top of my head. Basically, something like that. You can't have that compact shape and have it work without working hard. You have to work hard. It reminds me of when Palace went to Man City earlier in the season and won 2-0. They had a very compact shape, but it worked because they worked hard. They had runners like Gallagher, for example, would help the fullback a lot just to cover the space. And he also worked hard in bombing forward and creating chances going forward. So Brentford, again, they had a compact shape and it worked for the first half, but then Liverpool found a way in, basically.
Well, the problem is the problem with that sort of tactic is it relies on you not conceding. So once you've conceded the first goal, you naturally have to open up, because otherwise you're not going to get anything.
Yeah.
And that's probably where the downfall came.
Basically, yeah. Brentford weren't bad. They just didn't know how to respond. They had one or two chances on Liverpool's goal, but yeah, they didn't offer a lot.
There's no shame to losing to Liverpool 3-0 though. Like not for any team really.
No shame at all. Definitely.
Man United lost 5-0 to Liverpool at Old Trafford.
Keep saying it.
So
yes, that was. I mean, Liverpool, Man United's case in that. I mean, we could go over that game till the cows come home, and by we I mean I will. But it was United. Yeah, that's another example entirely of how disorganisation against a team as dangerous as Liverpool just is going to lead to disaster. Because that United is the case back then, at least under Solskjaer, of no organisation at all.
Brentford, another game. So that's another 3 points for Liverpool, which, I mean, if they win their game in hand, they are still
8 points behind City.
8 points behind Man
and if
City.
they beat City at the Etihad, then it's 5 points.
Yes.
But that's an if.
It's a tall order. There's still half the season left.
I think Liverpool fans they've accepted the fact that the title's basically gone, but they are in 3 cups still.
But speaking of teams at the top of the table, Chelsea did not win their game against Man City.
You could argue that they lost.
You could argue that they lost.
But
I mean, I don't think there's much of an argument.
That just further confirms it, though, doesn't it? That the title is pretty much City's.
Yeah, or at the very least, definitely not Chelsea's.
No.
I mean,
so
it was nice to have a 3-horse race, but then I was hoping if it was 3-horse, it would maybe go down to 2 horse.
It would be nice if all 3 horses were had an equal chance of winning.
Yeah.
Well, the thing now is whether or not Chelsea will still finish top 4.
I think Chelsea are good enough to finish top 3.
They should.
They should. I don't think West Ham have the squad depth to push higher. I think West Ham are doing almost peaking, basically. It's a matter of whether Tottenham can develop some form, whether Arsenal can remove the inconsistencies that have plagued them recently and keep pushing up, and whether Villa, actually, not Wolves. I think Wolves don't win enough. I think they draw too many. Although I'm happy to be proven wrong, because they are.
Well, they've only drawn 4 all season.
Really?
They're more likely to lose than draw this season.
Oh yeah, no, draw FC. That goes more to the likes of Brighton or indeed Crystal Palace.
Yeah, Brighton are in double figures for draws.
Well, Villa are my outsized chance for you.
Newcastle would be known for draws if they weren't known more for losses.
It's kind of fitting, actually, that Brighton and Palace are both are both draw SC this season, and that their game finished a draw.
Very fitting. But Southampton and Newcastle both also have 9 draws, as well as Palace. So
then again,
4 teams that have a lot of draws.
You know how I said there may be a goal of the game week and James Ward-Prowse's free kick? I forgot the Palace goal.
Yes.
That's worthy of mention. All 11 players touched it. Ward turned into prime Cafu.
Oh, yeah, no, he did, yeah. A real team goal.
That was a genuinely good goal. It was the sort of goal that Brighton would have wanted to score. It says a lot that for the last few visits, Palace have gone to Brighton. They've had barely any shots on target, but scored practically from everyone. Especially, I think it was last season they won 2-1, or
yes,
was it 2-1?
Yeah.
It was the
only 2 chances they had, basically.
Yeah, the goal from Mateta and the goal from Benteke, both of which were, I think, the only 2 touches that Palace had in the box the whole game.
Yeah.
Mad.
That was.
And the Benteke one was right at the death, so very much
Yes,
the very definition of a smash and grab.
I'm not sure. Would any of you have any Palace or Brighton players in your team this season? Organic is an obvious choice.
Yeah.
I don't. Beyond this week. Sorry, Ben. I know you've got 3 Brighton players in, but in terms of attacking players, because Neil Mapai is hot and cold. Gallagher's had a great season. Edouard is improving.
Yeah, sort of improving.
He does look really good.
I made the mistake of keeping Vicente Guaita in goal, but despite him, I think he is available. But at the minute they are, Palace are using Jack Butland more.
Fair enough. Backing Butland.
Well, I've currently got no Brighton or Palace players. I'll probably bring Gallagher back in.
I'm likely to
do
do
a wild card this week.
I think Morpay might be a bit underrated, just a little bit. I don't like him. I don't like him for what he did for the Leno thing, but he's got 7 goals, a couple of assists. He's fairly regular when he plays 90 minutes.
He was.
I think he's good.
Is that a revelation we get? Sam, are you using your wild card in game week 23?
I will be using my wild card because I free hit last week to get away from the fact that I had a load of injuries and games that wouldn't have been played. So I free hit to give myself a week, and I've come back, and more players are now marked as injured.
Do you have another free hit? Because I use both my free hits in basically consecutive weeks to avoid the injury
I
issues.
used my other free hit before Christmas, so it's going to have to be a wild card.
So I probably won't do a wild card for this coming game week. I will likely. Smith Rowe should be back, I think. If not, then I'll bring Gallagher in, I think, or Coutinho, depending on which team they're playing, and I'll have a look. But I'm not sure at the moment. I'll have to keep an eye on who gets an injury or who gets sick, because you can't really tell nowadays, can you?
Going back to the table, so it's interesting. So we talked about Chelsea, who are on 43. Tottenham are down in 6th, and they have 4 games in hand with 33 points. So they're only 10 points off with 4 games in hand, which potentially puts them above Chelsea in 3rd. Now, whether they'll win them all is, debatable. One of them is Arsenal, who are on great form. Tottenham are a bit more hit and miss, although they've not lost in 5, Tottenham.
It's just that Tottenham lack the squad depth, especially now they're going to get rid of Ndombele and who's the Dutch player they brought in under Mourinho?
Bergwijn.
Conte wants to get rid of him as well. So they're getting rid of... To be fair, neither of those players have impressed a lot, but it's definitely... Tottenham have a rebuilding job going on at the moment. So
yeah, and they're going to have
top
to play
4 would be
these
lucky
games.
for them. Yes.
And they're going to have to play these games in presumably quite close succession. I mean, they've only played 18. Arsenal have 2 games in hand and are over Chelsea and are 8 points behind them. So less potential to get there, but could definitely move above West Ham and into the top 4 with their games in hand.
Of West Ham, Arsenal, Tottenham, which is likely to be the most consistent?
I think definitely Arsenal are the most likely to be consistent, as they are at the minute. It's difficult because they've got a lot of issues at the moment. But
I'm not sure really, because part of me wants to say West Ham.
Well, based on
part of me thinks Arsenal have the possibility of doing it, but I'm not really sure of those 3. I think Chelsea will likely be 3rd, but then 4th place is up for grabs for at least those 3 teams.
Based on recent form, it looks like Spurs probably.
I don't know. Do you think?
Would you say the League Cup was an aberration?
Maybe.
Well, Tottenham have, in the last 5 games, they've drawn 2, won 3. Arsenal have won 4, lost 1. So I guess and that one was against Man City.
Yes, that very good game. Yeah. So maybe Arsenal, in terms of recent form, have got the edge.
Yeah, because fair enough. Actually, if the loss is against Man City, it's not.
Yeah, and they have the points on the board, but Tottenham do have 2 games in hand over them, and are only 2 points behind them. So it can go either way. But one of those games is against Arsenal. So if Arsenal win that 2 points becomes 5 points.
That North London derby has a lot at stake, which makes it more interesting. I like it when a derby means something, aside from local rivalry, when there's status at stake.
If that derby had happened this weekend, if it hadn't had to have been postponed, then it would have really affected, because we had the entire bottom part of the table shift. I mean, Norwich are no longer on the route to the bottom. Burnley are now quite firmly there, whereas Norwich have got to win and move only 1 point away from safety, as in 1 point away from the 4th team from the bottom. Definitely not safety. That could have completely changed the landscape, especially with West Ham losing. Arsenal could have gone into 4th, or Tottenham could have gone above Arsenal.
It's a bit difficult to say with with the relegation landscape at the minute, because Burnley's still only 17 games. So with all those games in hand, you just want to see what happens first once all those games are played, and then though that might not happen until towards the end of the season. So
yeah, they will likely be pushed back until spring, I think.
The problem is they're going to be playing them in quick succession, and they don't have there's only 2 weeks of the transfer window left. They still don't have a striker. Well, a replacement for Chris Wood.
Well, that's the crux. Sorry, that's the crux of the matter with Burnley, actually, with Wood's the sale of Wood. Some argue that, or some online, I've been keeping an eye on this because I was surprised that Newcastle managed to poach him so quickly. I understand that Newcastle triggered the release clause for 25 million, so Burnley basically had to sell. But then I don't think that's completely confirmed. If it is, then Burnley need to start scrambling around and finding a replacement. If it isn't, then maybe Burnley had a backup plan in the first place. Either way, they do need to bring someone in.
Because otherwise it's a really poor piece of business.
It's great for Newcastle. It's very clever. For
Newcastle it's great, but for
cutting
Burnley,
a rival down.
Yeah, because even if Chris Wood doesn't perform for Newcastle...
He can't perform for Burnley by being at Newcastle, yeah.
Exactly, and when Wilson comes back in, you've got other options if you're Newcastle. It could be interesting, though, because there is the slim, very slim, but there is the potential for 3 teams to go down, none of whom were newly promoted, in Burnley, Newcastle and Everton.
That would make a refreshing difference. It's annoying when clubs go up and down.
It would be a spectacle. I don't think that will happen.
Oh yeah, it would be massive. If
how much of that? How much are you putting? How important is the name? Just the status. So I feel like you're looking at Everton as relegation candidates. You're looking at them in the same way as you sort of dismiss West Ham as the least likely to keep up their top 4 form, just because they're West Ham, they're not Arsenal, Tottenham. The same.
True.
It's just the name.
Name does mean a lot, though. To be fair,
yeah.
I mean, it's because name means prestige and players and all that.
Also reflects size. Name reflects size, and Everton, aside from being a big name, is a fairly big club.
Yeah, well, they are.
That's
so. I think Everton can draw. Yeah. Everton can, because Newcastle is a big club. Newcastle's huge.
Yeah.
They can draw players. They can draw. They definitely can now. They've got the money. So if Newcastle can start picking up points, then they'll probably spiral and end up going quite well up. If they can't, then they're in trouble. But yeah, I think Everton have enough draw to get in a manager who can keep them up.
Yeah.
But there is still a slim possibility that all 3 will be relegated, and it would be quite a sight to see.
Yeah, especially with Everton, because I mean. Unfortunately, Everton, remember the example of Schalke from just last season, a club that plays in royal blue and has crosstown rivals that were previously managed by Jurgen Klopp.
The parallels are uncanny.
But yeah, I mean, to be fair, I would like to see it on the from the point of view of it would be, I think, unprecedented. I think is
given Everton's history on the top flight, it would be definitely.
So, are there any matches we've missed off? I know we've talked about the table and how drastically that has changed. I think we've covered most of the games, except we mentioned Brighton Crystal Palace. There was a couple midweek from last week, which was West Ham and Southampton. West Ham versus Norwich and Southampton versus Brentford.
Oh yes, the Saints beat Brentford 4-1. Very convincing, that one. Very convincing.
In front of their new owners.
Yep, it's not a massive buyout, but it will be interesting to see what they use that money for, because Southampton have usually made money by selling prospects, so young, good talent.
I think we saw this actually we saw this result as we were finishing recording the last episode, right? Because I remember being like, "What 4-1?"
Oh yes.
But yeah, and West Ham beat Norwich 2-0. Interestingly, Moyes used that as the reason West Ham lost to Leeds. Which, interesting. Oh, because they played a midweek game, but Norwich also did, and Norwich went and won, and played the day before.
On that subject, do you want to touch upon the controversy surrounding postponements and how it's disrupting? Because we've seen on television fairly recently criticisms of teams seemingly cancelling because they just want to. Do you think that either team should just play what they have, go one way or the other? Because it seems to be a bit of a mess at the moment. Then again, the situation is it's not an easy situation.
No, because on the one hand, you've got the fact that the games have to be played, and they have to be played by the end of the season, which means there is a time limit, because you have to have the last game all played at the same time. That's not just Premier League tradition, but it means basically what you have to do going into it as well. And it makes it more entertaining, because everything is happening at once. So they have to be played before the last game week. You don't want to be going into that game week having to play 3 games 2 days apart over the last week, going into that last thing. The games have to be played, and they have to be played in a relatively short space of time now. I think there's 3 months left of the season after the international break. There's not a lot, and it's not a lot to fit in. Well, with Burnley, it's 5 games now. And I think every team has faced this postponement at this point.
I'm pretty sure most, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Only 3 teams have played 22 games. One of them is West Ham, who played Norwich. That was their catch-up from when Norwich had postponed it before. I assume Man City and Chelsea haven't had postponements, which makes sense. They're the teams with the biggest squads, the ones most able to handle it.
Although Thomas Tuchel did try and... He has complained in the past, and Chelsea did try and get a game delayed. I can't remember which game it was.
But I don't think Chelsea really have the need to. They have such a huge squad, and unless there's... Like, when they played those games, they were still playing world-class players.
Yeah.
Which means it was frivolous. Like, it would have been awful to have that postponed at that point. I guess the most controversial... Well, the only 2 this week are Arsenal and Burnley, I think, right? And Burnley, who have just lost their striker, and some people think it's because of that they're just trying to get a grip while they... can recover their players. Meanwhile, Arsenal have players out. Xhaka was carded. They have players out at AFCON.
It's cynical bordering on conspiratorial, really, when you're criticising a club for that kind of idea.
The thing is, you have to treat all the clubs the same. So whatever they decide, they have to apply that equally. And they have their rule of 13 plus a keeper, 13 outfield players plus a keeper. But I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird one. I think they need to. I think it's got to come to a stop at some point, and some point soon, because we can't have postponements going for so long, except in maybe extenuating circumstances.
There's going to be a pile up at this rate. Springtime.
Especially for teams who already have so many postponed. It's different if COVID rips through Man City right now and they need to postpone a single game while they get things up, and we're talking like completely rips through their squad, their backup squad, their backup squad, because they've got so many players.
The youth team.
The youth team, which is probably better than most. Then they've not had any postponements. They've got the room in their schedule. They've got to play European football as well, but they've got the room in their schedule compared to a team like Burnley that just doesn't have that room. So at some point, those postponements have to stop for Burnley, whereas teams like Man City and Chelsea have more leeway now.
Also, Europe doesn't kick off again until February time, so the worst of this latest flu wave will likely be over by then. So decreasing the likelihood of there being more cancellations, but you never know.
You never know. It's really difficult, and I think because the worst thing they could do would be to say, if you can't fulfill the fixture, you lose it, because that takes away all the entertainment value of the sport. Yeah. We've talked about that before, how entertainment is the lifeblood of football. You can't just do that, but the games do have to be played, and there has to come a point where you can no longer do it.
It's also like there's really annoying for fans as well. Like if fans are making the journey towards a game and they postpone the game like just hours before it's due to be played, which has happened a couple of times. I mean, they're probably doing a bit better on it now. They're doing it a day in advance or whatever. But when they do it like a couple of hours in advance, it's not fair. It's not fair for people who are making the journey.
No, definitely not. It's It's a failing of the Premier League, not any of the specific clubs.
What do you think about player positions? As in, how cut and dry is a player's position that it could be up to them to say, like, is it up to the manager to say, no, we're not, like, if it's teetering on this one player being able to play this position, like putting Marie, I saw one of the lineups for Arsenal players who could have played. One of them had Pablo Marie at right back, Ben White in midfield. Some of them are reasonable to expect. Some of them, I don't know.
I remember James McArthur getting played at left back, so that was it's all possible.
So, yeah, it's another thing as well, because that's not taken into account with the 13 outfield players plus a goalkeeper. Is it? It's 13 outfield players. It's not one in each position. To be fair, players should be within reason versatile anyway. You should be able to patch up positions if you need to. Not all players can. Not all players have that ability. You certainly wouldn't want if you've got 13 strikers available and no defenders, you don't really want your strikers playing in defence.
Well, you could argue it's the manager's job to adapt to the tools at his disposal. Just change the system. Yeah,
you can, but there are like there are levels to it, right? Like a defender, a centre back playing in centre mid, probably not the end of the world. I mean,
they'd just basically be a CDM without a very strong awareness of midfield. Yeah,
slightly different awareness, but you should be trained to at least try and adapt.
Yeah, they are professionals.
There aren't really, like, to be honest, beyond the goalkeeper position, there aren't really strict rules on positions in football. It's not like in like NFL where there are like strict requirements on the sort of players that you can have on the field at one time. So like to be honest with you, I would suggest that it's a case of all your players have to play for the team, depending on requirements. So to that end, you get instances of outfield players having to play in goal when there aren't goalkeepers available, or where you've like exhausted all your subs, so you can't bring on a different goalkeeper.
That's true.
But it's up to the Premier League. Can the Premier League force? They can't. Like in the middle of a game.
No, but they can say you've got the players available, therefore you play or you lose. And if the option is play or lose, more often than not, play your strikers at centre back and fulfil the fixture.
And that's quite entertaining.
Then most teams would choose to play, right? And
it's also not fair in that, like, because of the fixture pile up, it will probably prompt more midweek fixtures towards the end of the season, which usually isn't ideal for fans, because obviously most people are working or at school or whatever, whereas on the weekends it's not as much of a problem. It's just further emphasising the kind of problem with midweek fixtures, and so just ensuring that more of that happens towards the end of the season due to fixture pile-up is not something you really want to encourage. So avoid postponements as much as possible.
That's all for this week's episode of Flies on the Ball. We will see you next week. Bye.